too just want to take a second and talk to my mentors a little and just thank the program. It's been such a fun journey and a changing one. I think we get the mentors that we need for the semester that we need them. And as I look back, I moved 6 times during this program, so I was just moving constantly. And I think each mentor, except for my last one, I didn't move my last semester, but each mentor dealt with me moving twice and really was so understanding. So Peter, he really taught me to start over, and I think I needed that my first semester. You know, when he would say, "This will be a wonderful essay. Start with a blank slate," and I needed to learn that first semester. Aaron really helped me dig deeper into my ideas and thoughts and push my ideas even further. I really appreciated that. And Charmin, she just really pushed me to start owning some of my own ideas and saying, this is my authority as a writer, and you know, I'm learning things, you're learning things, Emily, you know, take a hold of this. What do you think about this, Emily? This is what I see. And so I really, really was grateful for that. And then Hope carried me the last stretch through this final manuscript, and I guess she just was so patient and delivered me some of my most valued learning, even in the last semester. So this evening, I just am going to share, actually, it's a revision of the very first thing, the thing I turned in to come to Antioch. And I put it aside, I didn't work on it until this last semester again. And it's a piece out of my experience living in Chad, Africa. I went there to get hours for PA school. That's kind of the route that I was headed, and worked in a hospital, a rural hospital there. I remember the first day my Chadian host family allowed me to draw water up for my morning bucket shower. Before that day, they had done everything for me. They'd lifted things for me, brought chairs for me when I was standing, and did all of the chores. One of the other medical volunteers told me that this was the family's way of welcoming me, and that it would offend them if I insisted too soon that I be treated like everyone else. But their kindness made me feel like this ritzy American sissy, distant and different. I knew that if I was going to stay the 6 months that I'd planned to, I would need to be able to get water. So after a few weeks, I put my foot down and said, I'll get the shower water myself. Grabbing the family's showering bucket, I walked across the courtyard to the open-air well, which wasn't lined, wasn't capped, and wasn't treated. A 3-inch brick-lipped ledge encircled the hole, but I'd watched even Kumate, one of the youngest of the host sisters, she was one of the smallest, pull water up all by herself. She straddled the gap and tossed the bucket down, which was attached to a long, dirty rope to the water's surface. Then she had used her whole body to lift and drop the bucket, bobbing it up and down, dunking it until it held the right amount of water. At that point, in the most fluid stream of movements, she would bring it up hand over hand until she held it in her arms. Even Kumate, only 6 years old and weighing a mere 50 pounds, had made it look easy. As I stepped up to straddle the well, I dropped the bucket down to catch the lip of the bucket in the water. Oh, pardon me. As I stepped up to straddle the well, my blue and white striped bathrobe threatened to unwrap and reveal what is a scandal in Chad, a bare set of knees. I quickly rearranged the flaps of fabric and tied them shut before proceeding. Everyone in the courtyard had stopped to see how I would manage. I dropped the bucket to catch the lip of the bucket in the water. Everyone was trying not to laugh. When the bucket finally filled, it overfilled. I pulled it up hand over hand, but the weight of the bucket the weight of the load made it awkwardly swing and scrape against the well wall the whole way up. Dirt filled in and formed a thin film across the water's surface. I didn't give up or let on that I cared, though. I just emptied the contents into a separate showering bucket and started the journey across the courtyard, leaning hard to the right to counter the weight of the bucket, which was leaning on my left arm and shoulder. The water sloshed against my calf and ran down my ankle. As I entered the shoulder-high mud wall showering enclosure, my stomach turned as pools of urine marinating in the sun came into view. The family's shower also served as their bathroom. Bricks were strewn across the dirt floor so that a person could stay above whatever someone had forgotten to wash out of the drain hole in the wall. But that odor, it rose from the ground surrounding me. I set the bucket in the clean corner and tipped it slightly to send a stream of water in the direction of the urine. Then I did a slow, careful dance across the bricks, draped my towel, bathrobe, and underwear over the far mud wall, and stood there naked. White desert fowl flew overhead, and the malaria-infected mosquitoes flocked to every part of my body that I wanted to keep private. Chad shields a body from nothing, I thought. From where the family had built the shower, I could look out and see everyone carrying on their morning duties. It was understood that it wasn't polite to make eye contact with someone or try to communicate with them while they were bathing, but sometimes eye contact was unavoidable. I looked out over the low showering wall that day, and I saw Dinga, my host sister, 14 years old, who had been adopted into the family, pounding rice for the evening meal. Dinga had a lot of power in her thready biceps. Her wrists flexed as she slammed the heavy pole down onto the kernels that lay in the wooden bowl. That day had been a good day for Dinga, and by that I mean that her heart was beating well, which wasn't always the case. Some days, when she'd eaten too much salt, or when her heart had been overworked, it thrashed like a small animal trapped inside her chest. She would pull down the neckline of her shirt and show me the chaos. I could see her heart visibly pounding under the thin flesh, which covered her sharp-looking set of ribs. My host father, Samity, who had started out as the maintenance man at the local hospital, but who had learned to do surgery through observation and was now the local surgeon, told me that Dinga's heart had always been like that, a birth defect, he'd said. Perhaps there was something wrong with the valve, he'd said. Nobody knew for sure, though, since there was no echocardiogram machine at the hospital. Nobody had ever taken a picture of Dinga's heart. Her heart kept her skinny. On bad days, it beat so arrhythmically that she struggled to breathe. She'd sit against the mud wall of Samity and Jolie's hut and stare out into the hot air. I'd ask her questions, but it was as if she didn't even hear me. At best on those days, she'd nod without caring what the question was. When her heart acted up, Dinga didn't eat and she couldn't sleep. Kuredi, she'd say, pointing to her arms, which extended out from her thin dresses like stakes of a tent. I want to be fat, she'd say, skinny no good. Everyone in Chad wanted a plump body. Bulky meant wealthy, fat meant rich. My host mother, Jolie, often looked me up and down, and if I had been sick or lost weight, she'd say, skinny, not good. Once she explained to me at great length that to be skinny was to be unloved. If someone loves you, they put food in your belly. Her theory made profound sense in a culture like Chad, where provision is often a result of hard work or even an act of self-sacrifice. It became Jolie's goal as my host mother to send me back to America fat. If you go home fat, people there will know that you were well loved while you were here. But for Dinga, even love wasn't enough. On a few occasions during my 6-month stay in Chad, Dinga's heart sent her skyrocketing above the already high threshold of suffering that is endured in that country. When that happened, Samity had her admitted to the hospital. The nurse on duty always hooked her up to an IV and ran water, as the locals refer to IV fluid, into her veins. I remember looking at her chart when I was on duty and seeing that the admitting nurse had written malnutrition as the problem and treated her by adding shots of vitamins to her IV fluid. I knew that nutrition wasn't the root of the problem, but probably a diagnosis that the previous nurse felt he or she could actually address, unlike Dinga's heart, which could only ever be quieted, never fixed. Dinga dreaded those trips to the hospital, and I didn't blame her. Betty Adventist Hospital was located at the edge of the village, just across from my host family's series of mud huts. The pediatrics ward, where Dinga was always admitted, held mostly feverish, malaria-infected babies lying on adult-sized beds. The air in the pediatrics ward was rancid. Mattresses were rarely washed between patients, and the linens were to be provided by the family, which often meant the mother would untie one layer of fabric from her traditional wrapped dress and lay it down as a sheet. When babies wet the bed, their urine soaked into the mattresses. Beds lay side by side without even a curtain in between. Patients and families in the pediatric ward and other wards too knew each other's business. They knew each other's illnesses, how many times the neighboring baby had vomited, and if a patient had received his or her medication for that day. Nothing was private. In those conditions, privacy just wasn't a priority. Laja kinin buja, Dinga would say, which translated directly as afraid of medicine very much. But she needed medicine, beta blockers and Lasix. They tried everything, but it became clear with each visit that none of these medicines could manage the problem. One night, when we were all sleeping on the big grass mat outside, as we did when the heat inside our huts became unbearable, I woke up to see Dinga sitting next to me, gasping, her shoulders rising and falling in painful rhythm. "Ça va?" I asked. "It goes?" "Ça va di," she replied, combining French with the negative of that region's dialect. It goes not. Things weren't going for Dinga, not well anyway. I asked if she wanted water, wanted to lie down, wanted my blanket, but she only grabbed my hand and held it against her chest, bum 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 bum, arrhythmic. Those days of brokenheartedness were difficult to watch. Although those days of brokenheartedness were difficult to watch, Dinga's good days almost made me forget that she was sick. She wasn't in school, but she was husband shopping weekly. She was popular with the village boys, and they'd line up on a bench outside the courtyard wall where she'd bring them tea or her famous sesame ball or peanut butter soup. What qualities she was looking for in a boy, I wasn't really sure. She and the boys rarely exchanged more than jokes, and I suspected that those were only the preliminaries, the tryouts, if you will. The family teased Dinga mercilessly about these boys. If she was gone for an evening, we'd accuse her of having a boyfriend across the village. She'd shake her finger back and forth while giggling, exposing that sweet gap between her two front teeth, her eyes pinching down like two suns, sending wrinkle rays from their corners. Jokes about boyfriends never got old. At one point, I watched, during my shower, Dinga, who was sweating from the hard work of pounding rice. I watched her glance over, and she caught me watching. With an audience of one in the grandstands of the family shower, she threw up the pole, clapped twice, and then caught it again, her arms re-engaging with that surprising force. She was showing off, and I was happy to see her happy. I bent my body over the showering bucket and, dipping a cupped hand in, tossed water over my shoulder and let it run down my back. In Chad, I learned to shower more efficiently, to wet my entire body, soap it thoroughly, and then rinse by sending short and quick splashes over my body. I used the last of the water for one final rinse, raising the bucket up over my head, letting the water wash over me in one redeeming sheet. That last action always felt so American, frivolous. To use anything unsparingly in Chad felt frivolous. I reached for my towel and shook the dirt from it. Sometimes at this point, if I wasn't careful, I'd bump into the mud wall of the enclosure and dirt would stick to my wet skin. That always upset me more than it seemed it should. After all, as soon as I made the walk back to my hut, dirt was going to cling to my ankles anyway. I just wanted one moment in the day when I could know that I was clean, one moment when I wouldn't be sweating, one moment when I could be alone. But the shower in Chad didn't offer any of those things. It wasn't clean, there wasn't enough sanitation, there wasn't any privacy. Some nights, after working shifts at the hospital where often patients' pain couldn't be muted or medicated away, where babies died of things which babies should never die of, and when we worked by headlamp after midnight when electricity had been used up, I would come home craving the shower. Sometimes I'd dunk my whole head in the bucket and hold it underwater for a few seconds. Ironically, it felt like an emotional breath, like I could escape Chad's harsh reality for a second in the cool quiet of being submerged. When I'd come up, water would wash over my whole body and take off all the odors, the stench of penicillin that had shot into and burned the veins of those who would die of much worse if they didn't get it, the smell of the bleach water we'd used to clean patients' infected wounds, and the smell of our own sweat which had soaked through our nursing scrubs. I would tip my head back and work a dime-sized circle of shampoo into my scalp, letting it froth and foam. With my head back, the sky would come into view. The stars, unpolluted by the light of a city, would spread out above me. The shower was where I prayed. It was where I came to peace. I learned in Chad that there are two sides to exposure, two sides to vulnerability. You can be broken and burned by it, but in the face of those challenges, vulnerability is also the only thing that's going to heal you and help you survive. Some soft, smoky scent drifted over the low shower wall, and a child's pure and redeeming laughter floated over it. I was thankful for the low shower, for the low walls, for the ceilingless shower. Chad exposed a body to the stars and the urine, the hell and the holy, the pleasant and the displeasing. And during that time in the village, at the hospital, and with my host family, the process of exposure happened like it does in photography, bringing many precious things into view. An object is laid open, exposed to the light, laid open under it, and when that happens, every crease and every cranny, every dark and hidden thing is pulled out from the shadow, brought into full view. It's the process by which the greatest gifts arrived. I'm actually going to follow up with one very short little piece. In the process of moving one of the places that I lived was a mobile home with no air conditioning for a whole summer. It was a really rough summer in Loma Linda Inland. It's called Making the Best Assumptions. I met a girl named Kay in the mobile home community pool about a year ago. Both of us spent a lot of time at the pool that summer. I didn't have air conditioning and she didn't have friends, and it drove us both to the water. Kay helped me cut lettuce one day for a poolside picnic and assumed our friendship after that. She was only 13 and had been living at the mobile home park for just a week when I met her. Kay was an only child, her dad a trucker, mom out of a job, and Kay was waiting to get her shots and for any sort of bill to arrive at their new address as proof of residence so that she could finally be enrolled at school up the street. It was the end of September and she was 3 weeks late starting already. Kay was one of the most clever, sassy, cannonballing, enchilada-making, texting, swimming 13-year-olds I'd ever met. A few days into our friendship, while I was at work, she texted me to tell me that she'd left a plate of meatloaf on my porch. She'd made it herself. It was well over 100 degrees all afternoon, though, and by the time I got home, the food, covered in tinfoil, had been double-baked. I didn't think the meat could be trusted. She texted, "Did you get it?" "Got it," I said. I wanted to eat it so badly, mostly because of the rarity of such thoughtful impulses, and it felt wrong to toss the product of such an impulse to the side or throw it away. I kept it on the kitchen counter for a whole day before throwing it. Kay dropped by the mobile home one day when my friend Tyler was visiting from Washington. She makes friends so easily, assumes friendship with no hesitation, and soon the three of us had cooked tortellini and were eating in my living room, sweating in the heat. When we could take it no longer, we said, "To the pool," and headed out the door. Kay climbed up to balance on the handlebars of my bike as we rode. Her brown hair flew back into my mouth. I was spitting, sputtering, both of us laughing. Tyler came riding in behind us on his longboard, pedaling one foot on the still hot black top, surfing the street with great fluidity. Kay and I tipped over at the corner, and Kay catching herself on her feet, and me putting my legs down to keep the bike upright. Kay laughed and came back, ready to get on again. The ease of that moment and the assumption of close friendship between strangers gave me hope about the direction each human is headed, about the help that might be along the way. I felt like the three of us could ride whatever wave we were on, all the way to wherever we needed to go, that there was momentum, that there was hope. I learned that from Kay, to assume the best of people and to believe good things into being. Thank you.